Today's episode is about a serial killer who was one of the most controversial figures in American history. From his arrest on August 16, 1975, until his execution in 1989, he became one of the most controversial figures in American history. The controversy was not due to his horrifying crimes, which included murder, rape, and decapitation of his victims, but the main reason was the sympathy of women and teenage girls towards him, as if he were an angelic singer or a handsome romantic actor. He is theater Robert Bundy, famous as Ted Bundy. In 1979, many people followed the story of the serial killer Ted Bundy during his trial and interrogation. He committed a large number of murders and sexual assaults in various areas of the United States. Although he confessed to killing and raping 36 girls, the police confirmed that the number of his victims exceeded 100. Before we learn about his crimes, let's get to know his childhood and upbringing, which created an unmerciful killer. He was born on November 24, 1946, in Vermont, USA, to a devout Catholic family. According to him, in his childhood, he was a smart and shy child with no social relationships. He was raised by his grandparents, who convinced him that they were his parents and that his mother was his sister. But in the end, he discovered the truth and expressed his lifelong resentment towards his mother for lying about his birth origin, leaving him to discover it for himself. His original name was Theodore Robert Cowell, but he was named Bundy by his mother's husband. Ted was handsome, charming, educated, and very intelligent. He studied psychology at the University of Washington and graduated in 1972. In the following year, in 1973, he was accepted into law school in Utah, but did not pursue his studies there and did not obtain a law degree. Ted worked at an emergency center, where his job was to receive phone calls from people facing psychological problems, some of whom were on the verge of suicide. His task in that job was to support and help these individuals cope with their problems. His first crime was committed on January 4, 1974, when he mercilessly attacked Karen Sparks, a student at the University of Washington, in her home in Seattle. However, she survived the attack and is considered one of the few victims who escaped, although she suffered permanent brain damage from the assault. The first murder occurred in the same month but on a different day. It was a girl named Linda, a law student at the University of Washington. Her roommate woke up in the morning, and when she entered her room, she didn't find her. She thought she might have spent the night outside the house, but her parents called and reported her disappearance. The police went to her house and upon examining her room, found bloodstains on her bed, resulting from her resistance to someone. They realized they were dealing with a kidnapping crime. The police couldn't obtain any fingerprints or evidence to lead them to the killer. Her remains were found a year later, along with the remains of other women, outside Seattle in Taylor Mountain. It didn't take long after Linda's murder for the police to be surprised by the disappearance of a girl named Donna. She was a student who left her house to attend a jazz party at a university campus and was never seen again. Another report was filed about the disappearance of Susan, an 18-year-old girl who went to watch a movie and never returned. The cases of missing girls, mostly students, continued, and the police were unable to solve the mystery of these incidents. The number of disappearances increased significantly in early April 1974, when 4 girls went missing, and none of them were found, causing fear among the public. The reports of disappearances rapidly increased, and it was observed that there were similarities in the characteristics of the victims. All of his victims were slim, white, with long hair parted in the middle, unmarried, and students aged between 18 and 22. The last time they were seen was always at night, leading the police to believe they were dealing with a serial killer. Security was able for the first time to gather some evidence. Several witnesses confirmed being present at the locations where 2 girls were abducted simultaneously. They all described a handsome young man with brown hair who wore a cast on his right hand. He would ask the girls for help in unloading a sailboat from his car. Ted's downfall began when he attempted to capture a new victim, Carol Durange. He told her that someone was trying to steal her car and she should ride with him to the police station. This incident occurred on November 8, 1974. Shortly after, Carol became worried and asked him to let her out of the car, but he refused. After driving a few kilometers, he began to handcuff her with iron, and he almost succeeded in killing her, but she hit him on the head with a rock and managed to escape. She reported him to the police, and his car's description was circulated among different police units, initiating a search for him on charges of theft. By chance, on August 16, 1975, Ted was driving his car at 3 a.m. As soon as he saw a police car, he tried to escape, which raised suspicions for the police officer. He pursued him and managed to catch up and arrest him. Upon searching his car, the police found some suspicious items, including a crowbar, handcuffs, a mask, a flashlight, gloves, a long rope, long stockings, garbage bags, and a torn blanket. He was arrested, but due to lack of evidence, he was released under surveillance. Despite his release, some police officers and investigators felt that his car was familiar to them, so they contacted the Washington police to find out if he was on their list of suspects in Washington. Several months after his release, he was arrested again. He was identified by Carol, the victim he tried to deceive by pretending she was being robbed. The charges were proven against him, and on March 1, 1976, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison for theft and intimidation in the county jail in Utah. The murder charges were not addressed at that time. The police presented Ted to psychiatrists to determine if he suffered from any mental disorders or not. However, the medical examination showed that he did not suffer from any disorders or addictions. By chance, the police discovered hair strands in his car belonging to 2 previously murdered girls. The court decided to reopen the investigation with him, but this time, including the murder crimes. Ted was not an ideal prisoner. He attempted to escape more than once. While being transferred to another prison, he jumped out of the police car and managed to escape for 3 days, but he was captured again. On his second attempt, he made a square hole in his cell ceiling with a hacksaw. He climbed through the hole and walked out of the main prison door, taking advantage of the guard's absence. He managed to reach the main corridor of the prison and escaped by stealing one of the cars from the parking lot. He then bought a plane ticket to Chicago and took a train to Michigan, where he stole a car to Atlanta and left it to board a bus heading to Florida. He killed 3 more girls there. The police managed to arrest him for the 3rd time, but this time, the final death sentence awaited him. The court found him guilty of nearly 40 murders, and the verdict was issued against him in 1980. However, the execution was not carried out until 1989 because Ted managed to recruit multiple lawyers to prove that he suffered from a mental disorder, but all their attempts failed. What made it even more difficult to carry out the death sentence was that Ted received thousands of letters, not threatening or insulting letters, but letters of admiration and sympathy from women of different ages. He even married one of his admirers, Carol Ann Boone, and had a daughter with her while in prison, 2 years after the death sentence was pronounced. Ted Bundy received exceptional media coverage, turning him into a celebrity. It seemed as if American society could not believe that a serial killer could exist who would rape his dead victims and at the same time be white-skinned. As a result, Ted Bundy received special treatment throughout his prison term. He was allowed to speak to the media, was transferred to a larger room with better lighting for reading, and was never placed under strict surveillance. This helped increase the number of times he escaped from prison. Even the judge who handed down the death sentence to Ted Bundy showed profound sympathy and continued to console him. He praised his intelligence and cunning. The trial of Ted Bundy became an enduring witness to the deviation of the American standard of human rights and the stark discrimination against people with black skin. Ted Bundy was executed by the electric chair in January 1989 in Florida. On that day, Donald Trump, the former American president and the prominent businessman at the time, issued a statement calling for the execution of 5 individuals accused of raping a woman in an American park. The intensity of the demand can be understood when it's learned that the 5 accused individuals were black children, ranging in age from 14 to 16 years old. The same American media that granted Ted Bundy freedom did not give these children a minute to defend themselves. The media described them as animals, a term that was never used when talking about Ted. The children were sentenced to prison, and some of them served their full sentences until their innocence was proven after a full 10 years. Meanwhile, the American media and justice system sought to exonerate Ted Bundy despite all the overwhelming evidence against him. Bundy suffered from necrophilia, engaging in sexual acts with his victims after killing them. He justified his crimes by claiming an obsession with pornography. In the investigation, Bundy admitted to raping, torturing, and dismembering his victims. He often kept mementos from them, such as their heads, for several months. One of his most famous quotes was, "We serial killers are your sons. We are your husbands. We are everywhere. And there will be more of your children dead tomorrow." It seems that Ted's revenge against his mother came late and in a twisted day. He sought to form many relationships with girls, starting with his relationship with his classmate Elizabeth Kendall, who later wrote a book about their relationship after his arrest. It is believed that Kendall, his partner and Ted's mother figure, played a role in shaping him into the person he became, because Kendall escaped from Ted without explaining the reasons for her escape. We hope you liked the video, and remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and activate the bell button to receive all the latest updates.